Gallio has gone from one of the least played champions in League of Legends to one of the most played champions in League of Legends. Competitively speaking, he has a almost 100% pick and ban rate among the major regions. Before, Gallio's play rate rarely rose above 1%, but now you can see high elo players playing him in so many different roles. The two main roles that Gallio is being played at right now is mid and top lane. What's really interesting is that the pros are building Gallio the exact same way in two very different roles, full tank. Why are pros going for a full tank mid laner? Kuro, Bjergsen, even Faker has been playing mid lane Gallio. Here's why Gallio is so good, and here's why he's being played mid lane. Gallio is essentially the perfect tank. He literally does about everything that a tank needs to do. There's an old saying in League of Legends, if a champion is meta in more than one role, that champion is probably overpowered. Gallio can be used in 4 roles, and is currently overused in 2. There are 5 main characteristics that make tanks good. Most tanks have 2 or 3 of these traits, and excel at 1 or 2 of them. Gallio, on the other hand, he's got all 5. Tankiness, engage, mobility, wave clear, and peel. Gallio's W alone accounts for 3 of these important characteristics. His W gives him % damage reduction, which makes him really tanky. It's an AoE taunt effect, which means you can peel and engage with it. His Q and passive provide wave clear and lane pressure, while his dash and his ultimate provide really strong mobility. So it makes sense as to why Gallio is being picked and banned a lot in top lane, but why has he now transitioned into a mid laner? Not only has he transitioned into the mid lane, his build hasn't changed at all for the mid lane. The only real difference to this build is that you're rushing magic resistance as opposed to armor now. The first reason as to why Gallio mid exists is because the top lane meta has moved away from tank champions. Carry top laners right now are very strong. Fiora, Kennen, Rumble, they are all very highly contested picks in competitive right now. Depending on the matchup, Gallio can be somewhat abusable. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, if Gallio just rushes one magic resist item, without support from the enemy team, Gallio will basically never die to his laner. While carry champions are very strong for lanes and split pushing, they can sometimes hinder a team comp from being very effective without a consistent frontliner. Having Gallio on your team makes team fights easier, and it allows these carry top laners to do what they want to do in team fights. The second reason that Gallio mid is being played so much is because of a specific team composition. By picking a fast run-at-you champion such as Olaf, you can then use Gallio's ultimate as a much more effective engage tool by giving him 20 to 50% damage reduction and forcing the enemy team to run back. This engage is easy to pull off and difficult to counter. If you're relying solely on Gallio for your engage, it can be somewhat difficult to actually utilize this ultimate to its max potential. Most of the time, you're just going to be ulting in the middle of a team fight. Another reason as to why Gallio mid is being played is because Gallio's damage reduction scales off magic resistance. If you're in a lane where you're incentivized to buy magic resistance, you can more quickly scale up that damage reduction to make you more tanky. But the main reason that Gallio mid exists is because of his ultimate. Gallio's ultimate is a true lifesaver. 20 to 50% damage reduction along with a giant tank flying in with taunt dash justice punch, that's pretty hard to deal with. You can split side lanes, you can punish people for playing too aggressively, you can turn ganks around or coordinate with your jungler to make ganks. Maybe the enemy team is absolutely sure that they're about to get a pick off, but then all of a sudden this person gets a bunch of damage reduction and a Gallio flying in to protect them. And in the end, no one on your team even ends up dying. That's a real tilter. Not only is Gallio's ult good for protecting others, it's also good for protecting himself. It's a very long dash that cannot be interrupted without some hard form of CC. Think of Gallio's ultimate similar to Shen ultimate, except that Gallio's ultimate actually does damage and can knock people up. So why is Gallio the only tank mid laner? Why not play Shen mid lane? Why is Gallio the only one in the mid lane? That's because unlike other tank champions, Gallio isn't just some fleshlight designed to take a pounding. He puts out a lot of pressure, and he can't get easily shoved in like other tanks. His base damages are nothing to fuck around with. He does a lot of damage for a tank early game, and he has good, safe, reliable wave clear. Now, here's the big question about Gallio mid. If I don't pick a damage mid laner, won't I lose a lot of damage? Where's the damage on my team coming from if I have a tank mid laner? Yes, if you go to the extreme late game, or if you fall really, really behind, well, even someone like Faker is going to look pretty useless on Gallio. But the point of Gallio mid is to have a safety net for your team composition. When you have someone like Gallio on your team, the laning phase becomes inherently easier because every single lane has their own guardian outside of mid lane. By choosing to have Gallio on your team, your jungler is allowed to make much more risky, aggressive invades, dives, and ganks. In other words, Gallio is meant to create enough map pressure that it snowballs your team into a position where either the late game doesn't occur or you're going into the late game with a good advantage. AD carries have also been gradually buffed up over the season, so now these hyper carries feel a lot like hyper carries again. So before we used to have Karma and Lulu protecting these carries, is it so weird that we have Gallio protecting them now? For masteries, go 12-0-18. Gallio isn't really mana hungry if you go with the Doran's Ring build. His mana costs are generally fairly low. As a tank who likes to get into the middle of teamfights, Courage of Colossus makes perfect sense on Gallio. A slight variance that you can choose for on Gallio is instead of going Insight, you can go for Fearless for a decent resistance buff in lane and in teamfights. Max QWE. Q is your primary lane tool and your best form of wave clear, so naturally you max it first. You max W second because the damage reduction that you receive goes up with every single point. For your build, either start Doran's Ring plus Pots or Corrupting Potion in order to be able to harass and stay in lane. For your first back, you can either purchase more Doran's Rings, a Dark Seal, or Corrupting Potion if you have yet to buy it. Generally speaking, you should have around 2 or 3 of these starting and follow-up items. For your boots, since Gallio is a tank, 70% of the time, you're probably going to be buying Ninja Tabbies. Unless the enemy team comp is overloaded with CC and magic damage, generally speaking, Ninja Tabbies is usually the better choice. For your first item, Gallio has a lot of options. Adaptive Helm is better against champions who have a lot of consistent magic damage. Abyssal Mask is better if your team composition has a lot of magic damage. Visage is a raw stats item. Frozen Heart is best against champions that like to auto-attack a lot, and Iceborne Gauntlet is against AD champions that you want to play aggressively against. One item that is overbought on Gallio is Sunfire Cape. Many tanks rush Sunfire Cape because they have a lacking in wave clear. Gallio does not fit that case. He doesn't need Sunfire Cape. He has plenty of wave clear on his own, and if you want more direct pressure, Gallio can buy Iceborne Gauntlet instead. After you've purchased one of these first choice items, you should purchase a second one from the opposite resistance category. For the mid game, you can go Gargoyle Stoneplate, Randuin's Omen, or Thornmail. Stoneplate is every single mega tank's dream, but it's not very effective unless you have some HP and resistances first. Now that AD carries are much more effective again, Randuin's Omen has returned to the meta. And Thornmail, well, it's Thornmail. You can't go wrong with Thornmail. For runes, go HP per level, Magic Resist Blues, Magic Penetration Reds, and Ability Power Quintessences. Gallio has good base numbers and good AP scalings. By taking Ability Power, you're giving yourself a lot of early game pressure. An alternative to taking full Magic Resist is instead taking some cooldown reduction or some flat Ability Power. Now, if you're a mid laner who does not have good map awareness and you don't have a lot of experience playing tanks, then you probably shouldn't try to pick up Gallio. A traditional mid laner's playstyle is much different from Gallio's playstyle. A mage's playstyle is to wait safely and try to get their combo off. Meanwhile, Gallio is just trying to be at the front and the thick of everything. So it can be somewhat difficult to transition into that playstyle if you've never tried that before. However, if you have a lot of experience with tanks and teamfights and have good understanding of the map, then Gallio might be perfect for you.
Hard. Yeah, they're actually just looking to lock down Kuro. This is a dangerous one. Four-man taunt from Kuro. Mata stays alive for a long time. The box comes in. He's still not dead. Marin looking for it, finds the kill, but has he overextended? They've already got 2 kills. A freak of freaks. Still looking good, but that was massive from Kuro and questionable from KT to go straight for the Gallio.